Welcome to the podcast, Creating Value in Travel and Transportation, hosted by Landry Holy, CEO and founder of Fairval. In this podcast channel, we will exchange with entrepreneurs, industry experts, financial institutions, and investors on how they contribute to creating value in various travel verticals, thanks new innovative tech solutions and financial services. So, if you have an interest in travel retailing, hospitality, urban mobility, maritime, aviation and space tech, then this podcast is for you.
Hello everyone. I'm so thrilled to have you join us for the new episode of our podcast, Creating Value in Travel and Transportation. And today we are going to navigate in the high-flying world of private aviation. More specifically, we will dive into the exclusive realm of private jet brokerage, a market that's not just about luxury, but also precision, performance, and personalization. Indeed, as the demand for private jets ascends, the industry faces the challenge of identifying and meeting bespoke customer needs with agility and finesse. As such, to stay ahead, brokers must leverage cutting-edge strategies and technologies. And to illustrate how the industry is transforming and delivering more value thanks to the power of data and new digital tech in general, I'm thrilled to welcome Ganesh Vedarattiname, Strategy Analytics Director at Jetcraft, a leading private jet broker. Ganesh, hello. Great to have you here.
Hey, Landry, thanks for the invite.
Right. So, as the tradition we have in this podcast, let's kick off by getting to know you better. So let's start by, getting to know your past experience and what you actually do in Jetcraft today.
Sure. So I'm Ganesh Vedarattiname. I'm an aerospace engineer by training. Started my career in the US, in New York, as an aviation strategy consultant, supporting airlines, aircraft leasing companies, airports, and also business aviation clients. One of them being Jetcraft. I did this for a year and a half, and then moved to London, joined Jetcraft. I've been there for over 4 years now. Started as a sales engineer, supporting the sales team, helping them to value planes and analyze the market. And quite quickly, I saw that we could leverage technology to make the business more efficient. So that role of sales engineer morphed into more of a strategic and data tech analytics type of role. So today I'm running a team of 10 people crunching data and trying to make Jetcraft as smart as possible.
Very good. Interesting. So let's now dive into Jetcraft. Maybe if you could tell us a bit more what Jetcraft is actually delivering in terms of services, how it stands out in the market, and maybe, how big it is and where it operates.
Yeah, Jetcraft is the largest private jet advisor. Clients come to us whenever they want to buy, sell their aircraft. We've been doing this for 60 years. We're over 100 employees now. And what really differentiates us from the rest is that we have a global presence. If you look at the market, most of it is in the US, but we do have offices, around 30 offices in all different continents. So that really put us apart.
Right. So it's true that the jet brokerage market is maybe more smaller players, and definitely sets apart Jetcraft. So before we go into the nitty-gritty details, I think the audience owes to understand a bit more the market, the jet broker market. So maybe can you give us a couple of facts, figures, trends, and what the competition looks like, anything that could help us to really understand what is this market about?
Sure. So we're in the market of buying and selling private jets. If you look at it, there's around 22,000 private jets in the world. And out of this 22,000, every year there's about 2,000 that get sold. And for an average value between 12 and $14 billion. That's quite a lot. And most of the market is in the US, 2/3 of it in the US. And it's a really fragmented market. So you will have a lot of small dealers that do 1-2 deals a year. And then a few advisors like Jetcraft that does over 100 deals a year. And these top dealers make most of the market in terms of volume and value. So it's quite exciting because there's not a lot of transaction. It's a niche market, but it's been growing quite quickly. And the dynamics right now are very interesting to experience.
Right. So you already mentioned that Jetcraft was already differentiating by its global presence in the world. What other aspect would you say in this growing market differentiate Jetcraft basically?
I think it's the size. We're the largest advisor in the world, so we do the most transactions. That means we have access to the largest pool of buyers and sellers. So if you, Landry, owns a private jet and come to us, the likeliness of us finding the best deal and the best buyer for you is higher. So that puts us there. And then having a global presence, we know the tax and legal and marketing specificities of a region. That puts us apart. And a third point, I think that differentiate us is that we have access to financing. We can buy a plane, and that enables more complex deal structure that could, some clients come to us and just want to get rid of the plane quickly. A traditional broker couldn't do that. We could step in and take it in inventory. So that enables a lot of creativity in deals.
Right, right. So you actually coming back on that financial aspect. So you actually arbitrate in a way that when you can in the selling process, or how does that really work from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, so there's two ways to do a deal. Either we do a brokerage deal, and as in real estate, you have a private jet, you come to us, we sign a listing agreement, we put it on the market and find buyers for it. Or if you want to sell your plane to us, we can also do it and buy it. And of course, we'll manage the risk on our side, and then further on try to find a buyer. Sorry.
Right. And in terms of trends, I was saying that the market was ascending. Any specific aspect in this growth? For example, what type of people do you see buying more and more jets? What's your typical customer versus the new type of customers you're observing on that market?
Yeah, there's two main types of customers. The first type is big corporations. Netflix, Google buying jets to help the board of the company travel. And then you have the high net worth individuals. So athletes, and business people, the budget. And the split we see is 50-50, but what we see is more and more individuals buying jets instead of corporation. That was before COVID. Now, after COVID, corporations see the value of having a private jet, and they're coming back as well. So that's for the type. And then also age-wise, what we see is that the age of buyers is getting lower and lower. So younger people are now buying jets, which we find quite interesting too. People coming from the tech industry, especially.
Right. So interesting point you raised about COVID. I was interesting to know, as industry faced, the aviation industry faced a really big challenge when COVID arose. But I expect that a lot of people changed their mindset. You were saying that corporations see more and more the value after the COVID. Can you just share a bit more about that aspect? Seeing the interest is one, but what has changed in their purchasing behaviors, corporation and other potential customers?
Sure. So when you think about COVID, it's a time where you don't want to be close to people, especially in a closed space for a long time. And that's what commercial aviation is. So a lot of wealthy people started looking for alternatives. And one of them was private aviation. So what we saw in 2020 and 21 was a large influx of customers in private jet chartering. That's the entry point to private aviation. So they started booking charter flights. It became really tough to find the planes, and then these people will trickle up to fractional ownership, membership programs, and ultimately buy their own jets. So once they realize the value proposition of using a private jet, they usually stick to it. So that's why we see people, that got hooked to private aviation during COVID are now looking to buy a jet. And that's why it's been a good thing for us, for the industry as a whole.
Right. Right. So, and coming back to the regions, we were talking about ages, people getting being younger and so on. In terms of, you mentioned US was the big market. What is the trend? Is it growing a lot in Middle East? A lot of people I know go work in Middle East. I mean, it's booming in terms of investment there. But also, of course, I would imagine Asia is one big. Would you confirm those statements, and can you give us a bit more,
Yeah,
aspect?
yeah, that's correct. The business aviation demand is correlated to GDP growth, but also the growth of high net worth population. And if you look at it, most of the growth is in the Middle East and Asia. And another factor is that these regions are huge compared to Europe, for example. They don't have the terrestrial structure like the trains or any other means of transport to get there. So private aviation is definitely the right solution. Is growing, and that's definitely where we have our attention now.
Right, right. And let's maybe come back to the challenge of the jet broker. What are the big headaches you have today to deliver your mission, your services, and how do you come about to those challenges?
Yes. One of the key aspects with Jetcraft, as we're a global dealer, we usually buy a plane from, let's say, Asia and sell it to Europe or the US. So transcontinental transactions are a bit tricky because you have to understand really well the tax and the certification landscape. And especially during COVID, it was really painful to go through all the hoops and make deals happen. So knowing the local landscape is one of the critical aspects. And second thing, especially since COVID, the market has been really dynamic value-wise, managing expectations on both sides from the seller and buyer is tricky as well. So there's a lot of education that has to take place.
Right. So very lengthy process, I imagine.
Yes, yes, the sales cycles are long, but it's a small market, and you know you have to take care of the customer and educate him or her so he or she understands um, the value of the aircraft they're selling or buying.
And how long does it take to sell or buy a jet concretely? Let's say in the typical sell cycle.
Well, it can go from a few days to weeks to multiple months, right? But usually when an aircraft enters the market, it gets sold in around 6 months. Of course, it depends on the region, depends on the seller, but yeah, usually around the 6 months mark.
Right. Now, we talked about some of the hurdles, and I think we'll come back to it. And I'd like to link actually that discussion to how far is the industry gone in terms of leveraging digital tech or data in particular. So what's the general state today? Knowing that the small companies, you guys are probably you're the biggest you mentioned. So how do you see that industry with the respect of tech?
Yeah, I would say the industry as a whole is quite behind compared to commercial aviation, for example, which is already behind if you look at other industry as a whole, like real estate, insurance, or finance. Um, but business aviation being niche, it's even tougher. So the first step is getting the data right. There's barely any data standards. That's the first step, getting the data right, then adding the tech on top of it, and then finding insights. That's all we want to be. What we see now is that large companies like Jetcraft add the mean to invest in such tools and process to make it happen. And what I would say is the industry starts realizing the value of data and tech. So more and more tech companies are emerging, and more companies are collaborating on data as well. So it will come in the near future for sure. But as of today, we're still behind.
And do you think that the fact that a lot of players might stay behind is gonna generate some kind of consolidation, or some small player will just disappear because they won't be any more competitive compared to the ones who have embraced the technology?
I think you're right. And as I mentioned before, the market is really fragmented now. a lot of people doing 1 or 2 deals a year. With the technology, we're able to source deals in a much faster and better way than the small brokers that don't have the means to invest in such tools. So definitely we'll be able to chase more deals, and that will lead to consolidation that we're already seeing, by the way.
Right. And something I forgot to ask you. So when you're selling jets, what's the proportion between, new jets or very new recent jets versus, older jets? What's kind of, because I'm looking more doing a comparison with the yachting industry where you would have, the super yachts, there's,
Yeah.
you don't build a super yacht every year. And actually, there's a real issue to build new yachts because it takes so much time. So there's a huge
Right.
secondhand market on the long term. What's the status there in the jet industry?
Yes. So if you look at the private jet industry, every year you have around 600 to 700 new deliveries. And then on the pre-owned market, you have around 2,000 transactions.
Okay,
Yeah. So especially in 2020, 21, where there was a lot of demand, supply was constrained by new delivery. So a lot of people flocked to pre-owned transaction, which, drove activity for us.
right. And is there a lot of retrofitting like we see also in the super yacht industry of the older jets?
There is, but private jets are less customized than yachts. It's more business tool. So it really depends on the owner. Some want a really customized one. Some already think about the resale, so they want to make the interior quite neutral and the paints as well.
Right. Okay. And so now having talked about digital in general, understanding how the industry is a bit behind, which is quite it's interesting because we have the same issue in the yachting industry, which are niches which generate a lot of money. So coming from
Yes,
the digital space, I mean, I see that with big eyeballs, saying, "Wow, this it's an interesting market to look." Because people say it's a niche, so forget it. It's a niche with a huge margin, by the way. So
exactly. Without, yeah,
so, coming back to Jetcraft, then, could you just share with us how you're leveraging the tech, the data, uh, how you're making a difference there, thanks to those means?
sure. There's two main ways we're using data. The first one is to make the business as it is today more efficient. So, you know, which aircraft are for sale, for how much is that plane worth? We have tools and data that helps us find this really quickly. And then the second step is to source deals and have a think about the business in a new way. And if you look at the private jet, again, it's a niche market, 2,000 transactions a year. So you wanna you don't want to miss any of that, right? Um, and you want to focus your attention on planes that are going to transact in the coming year. If you look at the plane, there's actually some criteria that increase the likeliness of a deal to happen. For example, if an aircraft has a big maintenance inspection coming up, the owner probably going to sell the plane. If their plane's coming out of warranty soon, same thing. So we analyze all these criteria and combine them in a tech tool that basically tells us, well, you better focus your attention on this plane. And the goal of all this is to increase the volume of deals.
That's interesting. I do the analogy with one of my clients, which is in talent acquisition. And there was similar aspect, which is, when people start to redo their CV and,
Yeah, number of
you,
connections to LinkedIn, and
you have
yeah,
like little signs.
yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. Do you have an anecdote where actually the fact to be using data or the digital, you managed to get a fantastic deal that maybe your competitors would have missed or missed? Yeah, we lacked anecdotes in this podcast.
Yeah, so we also looked at flight data. There's all these Twitter accounts that publish tracking of Elon Musk jet or any
Hmm.
celebrity jet. So we do the same thing, but for business purposes. And knowing where the plane fly and how it's being used really help us understand the behavior of the owner. So we had a prospect that was using a Learjet, which is a light size jet. He was based in Germany, and he often flew to the US, but because the plane was so small, he couldn't fly straight to the US. So he had to stop through Iceland each and every time. And the frequency of the flight to the US was increasing in the past few months. So we came to him and we offered him to trade up and take a bigger jet to fly nonstop. And that was the opportunity that where tech helped us figure it out. So you come to the client being educated and you understand his needs and you come up with solution. I think that's where tech can help.
No, that's a very interesting use case here.
Yeah.
So I was very intrigued when I saw that Jetcraft was stepping into the metaverse. I know there was a whole thing around the metaverse, and then people backed up and say, "Well, this is not yet the time." But I'd like to understand a bit more what was in your mindset, or what will how you're anticipating the leverage of such new marketplace, basically, because that's what it is at the end of the day.
Exactly. As I mentioned before, buyers are getting younger and younger. So we want to stay in touch with the latest technology. And we thought that getting a hangar in the metaverse so you could see the Jetcraft listings in there will be an interesting move. So we're monitoring this closely. And yeah, we do think long term it's going to pay off. So metaverse is one initiative, but we have also many other.
Let's move a bit more on some of the core data related topics. I want to talk about the big hype around generative AI. We see more and more usage out of it. Nevertheless, there's a lot of companies that are not using generative AI, don't even know what they could do with it. How do you think generative AI could be really well leveraged in your industry? What use cases are the most relevant you foresee?
Sure, I can tell you because we started using it within Jetcraft. We use it mostly on a text generation purpose. So, ChatGPT, we created the Jet GPT that's trained on the Jetcraft data. And the way it works is simply as you use ChatGPT, you can ask questions about the company and business aviation overall. So what aircraft do we have for sale? Send me the specification for this aircraft, or what's the market like on this model? And it replies to you as if you talk to a normal analyst. So that's a huge gain of efficiency, reduce the friction as well for the sales guy using tech. That's the first step of generative AI. That we can also see a lot of use case probably in our marketing space too. But right now we're focused on helping the sales team by, making information more accessible.
Right. And so moving on to other types of use cases, what's on the AI landscape? What's coming next? What's in the labs of Jetcraft?
Yeah, so
best.
our core business is doing private jet deals. So the question is, how can AI help us do this? I mentioned earlier, we have a tool that helps us prospect and find opportunities. What if this tool, after sourcing an opportunity, puts a value on the aircraft and then drafts the email to the potential owner, finds who the owner is? That's where we want to go. We want to, again, it's a relationship-based business. So there's always be a salesperson to make things happen, but how can we help the salesperson through tech at every point of the process? So that's where our head is right now, trying to fine-tune the sourcing tool and then probably plug that into a more comprehensive tool for the salespeople.
Right. So we talked about AI. We talked about the metaverse. Is there any other type of technology that you foresee interest? I mean, you mentioned about asset management. I expect that knowing to value a jet, having good track of the such assets is quite important. I was thinking, would technology like blockchain be of interest, or is there any space in the fintech space where you see a lot of new opportunities, as again, at the end of the day, your job is really to make that transaction happen.
Right. Blockchain is definitely something we're looking at. There's a huge hype around crypto, but people often forget that about the underlying technology, which is
It's true.
blockchain. The blockchain, what it is a digital ledger. You can put information and track it, which is obviously really helpful when transacting jets, because right now, whenever you transact a jet, you need to know the ownership history, maintenance history, flight history from different stakeholders. It takes a lot of time, it's inefficient. If we had all of this captured on the blockchain and accessible to the stakeholders, it will help make the transaction easier, but also make the aircraft more liquid. Then you could have banks and insurance coming in, looking at the state of the aircraft and then providing quotes to get financing, to get insurance, to get whatever type of other services. So it's going to help the industry stakeholders, but also the buyers and sellers as well. So definitely something we're looking at.
There's one thing we didn't talk about actually, which comes to mind because we were talking a lot about data, about AI, and also all those things. And I expect when you're doing a transaction, you're managing a lot of critical or sensible information data on not only on the jet but on your customers. So I suppose that cyber security is something which must be keeps you awake at night.
We have to be careful because, as you said, it's huge amounts of money, expensive assets, sometimes well-known people. So or we're doing everything. We can't keep data safe and our client information safe as well.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's a big topic which is a bit controversial, and I really wanted to ask you that because I think it's there's always this debate coming up. We are today in a world where we're looking at meeting some sustainability goals, and of course the jet has been pointed for many years, many times, and I wanted to see your view on the how is this change of mindset in the industry, but also from your customers is affecting your daily job, and how do you see that evolve in the mid-term, and why not in the long term?
Sure. Well, climate change is definitely something any industry has to look into, and just to put it in context, if you look at aviation, I'm sure it's around 2% of all CO2 emission, and business aviation itself is 0.04%. So it's really a tiny share. But even then, the industry is putting this as one of the top priority to change. And there's a lot of improvement in terms of efficiencies of the engine. There's also a lot of initiatives like the SAF, the Sustainable Aviation Fuel. Demand is increasing in our sector. That's for the short term, as well as some offsetting programs. And then on the mid to long term, I really believe in the power of technology, electric propulsion, hydrogen propulsion. And I think it's going to come from private jets, because if you look at it, these are smaller planes. It's easier to implement disrupting technology. So I think we'll start here and then flow into commercial. So I'm quite hopeful we have a good mix of short-term and long-term solution. And technology should help us there.
And you actually have your customers coming to some customers asking more question about that? Like, if I buy this plane, can I make it more greener? Is it compatible? Or actually people don't really care because,
it's growing. It's growing. It's still small, but it's definitely a growing concern. So we're here to find solution. You have more and more offsetting companies now that come to place, and with the SAF as well. I think there's a good plan there.
Right.
And we're happy to always guide our clients towards the right one.
And you mentioned actually something which is quite important, the electrification of aviation, where we know there's new aircraft coming over, being delivered like the eVTOLs and so on. I think this is going to grow dramatically your market. Is it true? Because I can imagine that still buying such aircraft, you always need someone, it's not an easy asset to sell. You have to, like you say, there's paperwork. It's not like you go to the market and you buy something. So do you see that as a big opportunity for your role as a jet broker?
For the eVTOL, you mean?
Yeah, the eVTOL or the fact that electrification might actually increase the usage of democratizing on one side, and so be more also adopted because it would be in line with some of the concerns we have in sustainability. So do you see that as a market opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. We look at eVTOL, we look at traditional private jet with being electrified as well. It's still a bit early right now. We have a couple of initiatives, but we're really curious about those. Yeah. And again, the pre-owned market will come a few years after first aircraft coming to service. But that's initiatives we're tracking.
Okay. Well, I think we've come to an end. I wanted to really warmly thank you, Ganesh, for your time. It's not usual that we have the opportunity to talk about an industry which is more closed industry like the super yacht, and it's been really fascinating to get your insight from the real world there.
Thanks a lot, Larry. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. So stay tuned for the next episode, and thank you again, Ganesh. Thank you to Jetcraft, and stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching or listening to the podcast, Creating Value in Travel and Transportation, from Fairval. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to it. We welcome your support, feedback, and suggestions, and we hope to see you at the next podcast. Fairval, creating value in travel and transportation.